Welcome to the MommyZen podcast with Marianne, Clyde.
Hi, this is Marianne, Clyde, and welcome to another episode of the podcast MommyZen. Our affirmation for today is, I'm allowing my true self to emerge. What's so important about this is we're going to talk about our authenticity today. And my guest is Slade Suiter. He is the author of a wonderful book called Get Off Your High Horse and Walk. He's also the founder of Authenticity Radio from Barcelona, Spain. So Slade, welcome. I'm glad to have you with me today.
Well, thank you, Marianne. I too am allowing my
true
authentic self to emerge.
Well, and that's so important because you've got some great points in your book and on your radio shows that we can really address these things. So tell me a little bit first about Authenticity Radio. How did that start and what do you do with that?
Okay, Authenticity Radio began about a year and a half ago. It's just as a hobby. We just started it, and the format was real talk and real people. And I just was very interested in getting a platform together where people felt comfortable enough about sharing what their viewpoint of a truth is. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that there's really not one truth, that being human beings, that there's many, many perspectives that we have. And that if each one of us kind of offer enough versions of what we see as a truth, then we start to get a bigger picture. And that's where it started from. Okay. And it's kind of grown over time.
And we share that perspective with each other to get this big picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just it, because we do have varying perspectives. And in this world today, where we have so many complexities and different viewpoints, different cultures, regions, and conflict zones, it's more important than ever to offer a bigger picture where we all can kind of buy into.
That's so true. And you know, at the very beginning of your book, Get Off Your High Horse and Walk, you have an illustration about how your authenticity got challenged pretty much before you were even born. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I certainly. When I was born, my original name is Stephen. My legal name is Slade Suiter, and I'm not embarrassed by that at all. However, before I was given that name, my name was actually given to be Slade. Mm-hmm. My parents both liked it, and I was about ready to be named Slade. However, due to external pressure from my extended family and the hospital staff, they said, you can't name your child Slade. What would you be doing to him? And so, as a step into authenticity, I just reclaimed that name because it was actually the authentic name that was given to me.
That's awesome. But it's so important, and that's a really good point, that one of the ways we begin to lose our authenticity is we allow other people's opinions, views of society to kind of mold us into a certain way of being, and very often that just leaves our own selves, our authentic selves, in the dust so we can conform.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
So tell me, in your book, you have a whole lot of ways about how you think people lose their authenticity. And then you've got, a lot, maybe 20 different types of people who live certain kinds of lies. So mm-hmm. First, let's talk about maybe the 3 most important ways that you think, or the easiest ways people tend to lose their authentic self. What do you think they would be?
Well, I think you pretty much nailed it when you began the program. We as children, when we're born into this world, we really don't have a choice of where we're going to be born into, what family we're going to be given, what primary education system we'll have, what parents will have, what country we'll have, what religion we'll have. It's all kind of given to all of us as a lot. And so we're kind of born into this. And as we grow, we're told by absolutely everyone how to live, what our expectations are of you to be a good boy or a good girl. And there's a nice book, The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. That was actually my favorite book. I mean, he's written some more, but The Four Agreements is that we make agreements as we go through our lives. And without really knowing it. And so that's kind of unconscious part of us, is that we're kind of agreeing to what's being told to us along the way, which is basically the way it kind of should be as children. And when we get old enough, we kind of have the obligation to go through everything and take a close look at it, okay? And to see if we really, in fact, do make an agreement with what has been told to us, from all of these people.
Actually taking responsibility for what we believe.
Right, right. Which kind of, my values as a person is where I operate from. And we can probably call that different things, the essential person, or the real human inside, or the spiritual person.
And in my book, the second principle I address is always know your true identity. And I think it's important for us as parents to know that true identity that you're talking about. And then I think it's just as important to try to teach it to our kids.
Well, Marianne, as soon as you figure that out, tell me. I'm very interested.
Well, I think it's all connected on principle one, which is connect to your Creator.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it, is being honest enough as a human being trying to make it through this planet and humanity in itself, and saying, you know what, I'm kind of clueless most of the time. I'm trying to figure things out. And I think we would really do a benefit for our children by admitting that and saying, you know what, I think one, you mentioned, or you actually asked, what was one of the main things that kind of threw us off.
Right.
There's a wonderful researcher by the name of Brené Brown, and she did a 12-year study on shame. Okay, shame as being one of the lowest level of emotions, and one of the most debilitating. Oh, I'm glad I got that word out correctly.
Right.
Emotions that we have.
Hardest to overcome.
Right. And what she came back with was very interesting for me. She said that there is, for boys and girls, the experience of shame is the same. However, it plays out in different ways. Okay, so
how is that?
So shame for girls plays out in kind of a perfection. We're trying to become perfect.
Right.
By external pressures and external expectations.
And performing.
And so girls growing up into women spend a lot of time and energy in projecting these images. That I also kind of wrote about in the book as well.
Right.
And then boys is really interesting too, is vulnerability, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. So I just found that very curious, and I think that we would also do very well as parents in addressing these issues. Is first of all redefining what perfection is. Right. Completely. Right. Because the word perfection is already flawed. So if for example, if we can make perfection as including all of my errors, my humanity, my defects, and then finding balance within that. Now that could be the new definition of perfection.
Well, that's true, and this is another free affirmation for today, because one of the affirmations I use all the time with all my clients in all my sessions is I am whole, perfect, and complete, lacking nothing. That's what I try to get them to learn to believe before we even start on their issues. Yes, we all have issues, we all have challenges, we all have imperfections, but the fact of the matter is your true and authentic self is already perfect. It's already connected to the Creator.
Marianne, you must be my long-lost sister. It's nice to finally find you.
Well, that's pretty neat. And so I'm glad we connected. As a matter of fact, what I want to talk about, because now we've learned, you know, how do we mess up our kids? How do we lose that authenticity? We instill fear. We instill a need for human perfection. We take away their authenticity. And so if you'll stick around, in our next podcast, I'd like to talk to you about how do we get it back? How do we refine our authenticity? Are you willing to stick with me for another podcast?
I can't wait.
Okay, so we'll do that next week. But for right now, we're going to sign off and remind my audience that the affirmation for today is, I am allowing my true self to emerge. This is Marianne Clyde for the MommyZen podcast. Join us again next week.
Thanks for listening to the MommyZen podcast. For nuggets of encouragement and strength throughout your day, follow Marianne on Twitter at mommy_zen and Facebook at facebook.com/mommyjustbreathe. Also, you can join our mailing list, leave comments, or ask questions by visiting mommy-zen.com.